short book of the long process for women's rights. Illustrated by Macy Glidden, written by Sarah Womack, narrated by Hugh Edgy, narrated also by Brandon Casper. Alright, so women have been fighting for rights and recognition for a long time. Take Adam and Eve, for example, aka the first people to ever exist. The story goes that it was literally created for Adam's benefit, and as soon as she started having her own ideas and goals, like eating an apple, per se, the whole world fell apart. Alright. Fast forward a couple thousand years to the 1800s, and feminist activists such as Elizabeth Cady Stanton and Lakita Mott are still demanding to be heard, despite adamant suspicion and resistance. The men who fought against women's suffrage, employee, unspecifiable acts, and violence against suffragettes. Women like Elizabeth Cady Stanton won't take no for an answer. The Seneca Falls Convention of 1848 embodied all of these women's anger towards the existing systems and remained the most influential convention towards women's rights to vote. The women who created the convention were active abolitionists, figurating for African American rights as well as women's. When the 14th and 15th Amendments were created for African American rights, a divide was created between women's rights activists and the time. This division was not based on race, but instead frustration that women weren't included in the amendment, as it was generally perceived that the two groups fought hand in hand.
Susan B. Anthony and Elizabeth Cady Stanton expressed this frustration publicly, while Lucy Stone and Mary Livermore supported the amendments for fear that if they were not passed, the fight for rights would stall permanently for both sides. Despite this, both activist groups fought together for equal rights, and finally in 1920, women were granted the right to vote through the 19th Amendment more than 7 decades after the Seneca Falls Convention. The League of Women Voters were established shortly after the creation of the 19th Amendment to help support women's act on their newly acquired rights. This organization is still active today in an effort to inspire more educated voting in both parties. Today, women are still actively fighting for equality with men. This inequality is shown in the pink tax and pay gap in a countrywide perspective. These issues have existed for hundreds of years and are still prevalent debates today. Women on a global spectrum are also fighting for rights, particularly in the Middle East, where religious issues affect civil rights. Malala is an example of a modern activist for women's rights, and people like her will create the change necessary in our world. The end.
This is the short book of the long. Alright, read this is the short book of the long process for women's rights. Macy, quit laughing.
When the 14th and 15th